to give us what we need. Hey!
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chuck D. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it! Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. Fight the power.
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing you by. Shine, flies, be patient, 'cause good things happen in time. We gon' get it right, we gon' get it right, we gon' get it right. We gon' get it right.
Protests and anthems, yes, we chanting a movement of people. It's like we dancing to the ministry of. It's the energy of, in memory of them that we love. The trinity of the people, the peace, the power, the truth. We speak the powers even louder. We can say it blacker, we can say it prouder. A woman vice president that went to Howard. Now we talk helping black businesses, and our differences is magnificent. Bringing light to the point where the prisons is. I was told good life is where forgiveness lives. The ascension is to leave what's left behind and feed the seeds with deeds that bless the mind, caress the mind, and question justify. With you and God in time, I best align.
Shine, flies.
You are listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, your host and chief White House correspondent. I'm in touch, and so guess what? You be in touch. Follow us on all the social media platforms at KBLA 1580. You can follow me at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. All you got to do is type in at Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ, and I pop right on up, fresh for you to follow. Also, be sure to download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand, or simply tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580. And then there we are, fresh for your listening pleasure. Also, be sure to subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast powered by KBLA Talk 1580. Did you know that KBLA is the only Black-owned talk station west of the Mississippi? Did you know that? Well, if you didn't, now you know. Pass that along. We are cooking up some good stuff here at KBLA Talk 1580, including this hour. But before we get to that, it's time for the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. Kicking us off, the Washington Post is reporting that the first U.S. bird flu death has been reported in a Louisiana patient. That's right. A Louisiana man has become the first person in the United States to die of avian influenza. That's according to state officials. They reported that just today. The patient, who was older than 65 and had underlying medical conditions, was hospitalized weeks ago in critical condition with severe respiratory illness related to H5N1 bird flu virus. The patient, whom people familiar with the investigation have identified as a man, had been in contact with sick and dead birds in backyard flocks on his property. It's according to state officials. The Louisiana patient's death does not change the overall assessment by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention of the immediate risk to the public's health from H5N1 bird flu. They're saying the risk still remains low, and so that's what they're saying for now. That's what we're reporting for now. In other news, the Washington Post is also reporting the fate of nearly 1,600 January 6 defendants depends on Donald Trump. James Tate Grant, he couldn't bring himself to admit to his father that he had joined the first attack on police at the U.S. Capitol on January 6, opening the floodgates for a mob that halted the certification of the 2020 presidential election. You see, Harold Grant spent his career as a federal probation and parole officer and criminal justice instructor. And he begged his son not to attend Trump's rally over what he falsely claimed was a stolen election. And when the elder Grant asked James whether he'd marched to the Capitol and gone inside, James lied and said he hadn't. James Grant eventually convicted of assaulting a police officer with a dangerous weapon, rioting, and other charges. His law school plans evaporated. He spent 3 years behind bars, then knocked on doors for Trump this fall after his release, and he said he still believes the 2020 election might have been stolen. And he knows that Trump has promised to pardon January 6 defendants when he wants something that he wants more than anything else. And so when we come forward this hour, we have two KBLA exclusives. We're talking to two individuals who were actually pardoned by President Biden. We have a chance to learn a little bit about their story, learn about who they are, and a little bit later, I'm going to ask them their take on whether or not January 6th insurrectionists, whether or not they should be considered for a second chance. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, you're going to hear from Norman O'Neal Brown. He's a 56-year-old man who was convicted of a nonviolent drug offense and pardoned by President Biden. More with Norman O'Neal Brown, in his own words, exclusively on A More Perfect Union here on KBLA Talk 1580.
We're reclaiming our time on KBLA Talk 1580 as we endeavor to build a more perfect union.
The following is not a contest and is a paid advertisement by Family Vacation Getaways for the purpose of soliciting sales of vacation ownership. For complete details, please visit fvgradio.com. If you want a complimentary stay in Cancun at a luxury resort, then Family Vacation Getaways may have your ticket to paradise. We're giving away a 5-day and 4-night stay to the first qualified 50 callers who can name an animal that lays eggs and is not a bird. An animal that lays eggs and is not a bird. Do you know it? Call now, 800-868-6431, 800-868-6431. You may also be eligible for an exciting bonus vacation to Orlando, Florida for just $398. And don't worry about anything ruining your plans. We can extend your travel up to 18 months. Name an animal that lays eggs and is not a bird, and you may be eligible to get a complimentary Cancun resort stay and an optional bonus vacation to Orlando for just $398. What are you waiting for? Call 800-868-6431. Again, call 800-868-6431 and give us your answer.
Febreze. As a rideshare driver, I love keeping my car smelling fresh and clean. So when I'm driving, I only trust Febreze car vent clips, featuring 3 distinct intensity settings, because it's that little touch that sets me apart. I can turn the intensity down for subtle freshness, or I can turn it up for when I want lots of scent. So whether it's set to low, medium, or high, with Febreze car, I know my car's going to smell amazing. Which keeps my driver rating right where it belongs. Picking up, Oscar!
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. So I take ZQuil.
ZQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZQuil nights. Explore our products at ZQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Yeah. The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's cal-cruise-news.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
We face tragedy, but we don't fall into despair. We continue our work to build a more perfect union.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and really honored to welcome Norman O'Neal Brown to the show for this KBLA exclusive right here on A More Perfect Union in Drive Time. For those of you who don't know, Norman O'Neill Brown is a 56-year-old man who was convicted of nonviolent drug offenses when he was just 22 years old. And since serving over 20 years in prison, Mr. Brown has worked with several nonprofit organizations, including those focused on rehabilitation, reentry, and justice-impacted youth. Sir, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Dr. Quartey. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. It's not every day that I get a chance to speak to somebody who has received a pardon from the President of the United States. Tell us where you were when you received your pardon from President Biden.
Well, Dr. Quartey, I had just arrived home from a retreat, and I was sitting on the couch, and my attorneys gave me a call maybe about 5:30 p.m. And my attorney gave me a call, and I picked the phone up, and he said, "Hey, Norman." I said, "Well, how you doing?" He said, "I have some news for you." And he said, I said, "Well, what's going on, Dave?" And he said, "Well, I want to inform you that President Biden has granted your application for pardon." So of course I got quiet, and it had to register. And once it registered, he said, "Are you still there?" And I smiled. I said, "Yes, I'm still here." And I had to take it in. So I was sitting on the couch, and it was overwhelming for me.
I can only imagine how overwhelming it was for you. Tell us about the journey to that point. Securing a presidential pardon is not easy. It can be very expensive, and there's no sure bets that you're going to get it. Talk to us about your journey from having been incarcerated to seeking this very rare demonstration of mercy by the President of the United States.
Well, Dr. Quartey, I have to take you back a step because one of the unique blessings that I had received after having 3 mandatory life sentences for a nonviolent offense was that in I think it was July of 2015, I was granted clemency by President Obama. And that was one of my first steps to one of my many blessings that I had received because of the fact that that's when I was fortunate and blessed enough to get from under those life sentences that President Obama had granted me clemency. And then 8 years after that, I was given a call by my attorneys, the same attorneys that worked with me on my application when I received clemency were the same ones that blessed me and worked with me when I received my pardon from President Biden. So my journey has been very a unique journey because I think if I'm not 3 or 4 of the only individuals in the United States that have received a pardon and a clemency from 2 different presidents.
I mean, that's exactly where I was about to go with this. I've never heard of such a thing. It almost sounds like the equivalent of winning the lottery twice. What was it about the circumstances of your case that moved President Obama to demonstrate mercy for you by way of clemency, and to have President Biden do that so many years later in the form of a pardon?
Well, I think some of the unique things that I worked on was the redemption and the redeeming of myself, the constant working on giving back, improving my mindset, making all types of changes, creating programs for the BOP, going infraction free throughout my whole 24 and a half years of incarceration throughout the Bureau of Prisons. And I think that some of that hard work on reforming myself and helping to reform others, which was given back to several things, and investing my time in myself and into others, I think that my reward was a blessing from God to allow me and put me in a position to receive these blessings.
Did you ever have a chance to meet President Obama after you received clemency? Have you had an opportunity maybe to send a note or a letter communicating directly to President Obama or President Biden?
Well, I had the opportunity in 2016, right after I came home, maybe about 6 months after I came home. President Obama had several of us to meet at the White House, and we were fortunate enough to go out. He took us out to lunch at a restaurant here in Washington D.C., and we sat down and we discussed some reform tactic in some areas that we thought could help reform some of the laws that were around criminal justice around drugs. So I had an honor and a pleasure to meet President Obama in person, and haven't had that honor and chance to meet President Biden yet.
Operative word yet. We got you there, and I'm sure if the president or his team is listening, perhaps they'll put you near the top of his list after January 20th, if not before. But I'm just curious, what were some of the reforms that you talked about related to criminal justice when you lunched with President Obama so many years ago? And what's the status of some of those reforms that you think might make a material difference in the lives of people facing similar challenges and circumstances as you?
Well, we had several reforms that have come out over the last, maybe I would say 8 years since I've been home. The Second Chance Act, maybe the mandatory 100-to-1 crack law had even changed down to 18-to-1. This was before I was granted clemency. So you have some other laws like what's the name of the compassion law? Several laws that have come out that have granted many people some relief on some of those draconian sentences that were once in place.
That sounds like a pretty substantive reform package there. And you mentioned the Second Chance Act, which, if I remember correctly, was signed into law by then President Trump, now President-elect Trump. How did you feel about that? Because there are a number of people on social media, a number of people in the streets, folks that work in the reform arena that contend that that law is being celebrated as being, more than what it really does.
Well, Doc, when we're sitting inside of prison and we're trying to work on gaining our freedom again, and we're working on trying to become better human beings by the time we enter back into society, we really don't care who changes the law. We want the law to be changed to give us a second chance. And whoever does that, when they do that, we're grateful for the change in the law. So we are sitting in there and we're trying to get back to our families. We're trying to give back to society. And whoever changes the law, we're grateful for the law being changed.
And speaking of whoever changes the law, right now as we sit here, President Biden has a little bit more than 2 more weeks left in office before President-elect Trump takes back the Oval Office. One of the things that President-elect Trump has pledged to do is to pardon folks convicted of crimes related to the January 6th insurrection. As we sit here today, it is January 6th. It is the day in which Vice President Harris has certified the 2024 election. 4 years ago, it was a day that will live in infamy, where there was an insurrection on our Capitol. I'm curious, as somebody who has been pardoned by the current president, somebody who's been given clemency by former President Obama, What's your take on President-elect Trump's pledge to pardon folks related to the January 6th insurrection?
Oh, well, Doc, I try to stay out of that lane when it comes down to who deserves pardons and who deserves clemency, because of the fact that by me being one who has received them, I don't think that I have the room to be the judge of any of that. I just think that if you have the power to exercise clemency or exercise pardons, I think that those who are worthy of reform and are worthy of receiving release based on what it is that those who are looking at their applications are getting, if they qualify and if they can get it, then I have nothing against that, because who would say I got it? And some people may not even think that I deserve it. So, Doc, I try to stay in my lane and try to stay in control of what I can control, and that's me and the reform and those who are constantly stuck in prison and deserve a break. I hope and pray that they can get one.
But, I think there are inquiring minds out there, some of our leaders, learners, and listeners, I think would really appreciate the perspective of somebody like you, a very unique perspective that we don't get to engage with on a regular basis. Are there certain offenses that are perhaps less deserving of pardons, less deserving of clemency compared to others? I mean, there are people that are pardoned for a whole wide range of offenses. Are there certain offenses, in your view, that are a pale above the rest?
Well, I don't know if they are, because I don't know circumstances and details of other people's cases. And I think that this is why we have a unique group of individuals who look over those cases that come out of the pardon attorney's office. And I think that they are the professionals that can make that deal, make that count, and make that judgment. So I will leave that up to them.
Speaking of pardon attorneys, I've had a few conversations on air with Jesse Jackson Jr., who is my new colleague. He has a show right here on KBLA Talk 1580 starting today at 1 p.m. Pacific, the Jesse Jackson Jr. show. And he has been very out front about his seeking a pardon from President Biden. He has sought pardons from previous presidents. And one of the things that I didn't know is how costly pardons can be. Talk to us about that.
Well, I had not had to deal with the expenses of a pardon, because both my pardon and my clemency were blessed. I was blessed to receive them from a pro bono standpoint. And the firm, Willman Hire, who I was blessed to receive, they did it pro bono. So I was not privy to the cost that it takes to have those professional attorneys to work with you on your pardon or your clemency.
And what was it about your case that attracted the support of this law firm pro bono?
Outside of God being involved, Doctor, I really don't know, other than when I did write them, they responded back and they looked at my case. They looked at my rehabilitation, and they said that they felt that my case was a case that they will be willing to stand by and work with me on my clemency. And then once I got out 8 years later, and I stuck to what it was that awarded me, which was my reform, that awarded me them to want to help me for my clemency. They asked me would I like for them to work with me on my pardon, and I said, of course I would, and that was what it was.
There are a number of folks that have been calling on President Biden to go big or go home, to issue a mass pardon to nonviolent offenders. to the likes that we have never seen before. Before we let you go, I want to get your hot take on folks that are calling for President Biden to do a mass pardon before he leaves office. Do you think he should?
Yes, Al, absolutely. I would love for him to, because there are many people who are incarcerated now that fit that blessing, and society needs them out here, because a lot of people have worked on their reform and are very deserving of a break. And I pray that President Biden would utilize his presidential powers to grant those clemencies and pardons to those that he feels deserving of doing so.
And among those pardons, do you think those pardons should reach sort of the Hunter Biden, President Nixon level of pardon in terms of all the things that they cover, or is any pardon a good pardon?
Well, I would hope that he could utilize it and free as many people that qualifies to be freed based on the standard that they see. So if it can get as big, if he can break the record, then I would love for him to break the record.
My thanks to you, brother. I really appreciate talking to you. I hope you'll come back again and talk with us, as I know that you've been doing a lot of work supporting folks in their rehabilitation, their reentry, particularly justice-impacted youth. God bless you. Norman O'Neill Brown, a proud recipient of a pardon from President Joe Biden, also a proud recipient of clemency from former President Obama.
Thank you for having me, Doc.
Of course. You've been listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward. You're listening to A More Perfect Union in Drive Time.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 things you should know from BIN News. A federal judge in New York is holding Rudy Giuliani in contempt for failing to turn over assets and financial information to 2 black former Georgia election workers he defamed. They were awarded $146 million after Giuliani spread false 2020 election claims, leading to threats against them. Wall Street is closing mixed to start another shortened trading week. Stocks rallied early in the session before the Dow turned lower in late trading. 6 states are under emergency as a massive winter storm brings snow, ice, power outages, and travel disruptions to over 60 million people from Illinois to New Jersey. Virginia, Kentucky, West Virginia, Illinois, and Missouri report the worst outages. And Dr. Charles McIntosh, Jacksonville, Florida's first Black pediatrician, will receive the 2025 Lifetime Achievement Award from One Jacks. The 97-year-old retired doctor who served on Florida's Board of Medical Examiners will be honored at the One Jacks Humanitarian Awards on May 1st. I'm Amber Payton on the Black Information Network, your home for Black News First.
South LA, it's a stall on the 110 southbound before Manchester Avenue, blocking the left express lane. Delays are backing up away from Stadium Way out of Elysian Park, the northbound side of the 110. Slowing as well from Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, traveling back towards the 5 in Elysian Park. A wreck in Long Beach wrapping up 405 northbound before Cherry. That's where the right lane has been blocked with delays away from Palo Verde, and southbound 405 delays overall slowing out of West LA. This is leaving Sunset Boulevard heavy in stretches all the way back towards Bellflower Boulevard in Long Beach.
Your local Staples has hot deals and super low prices throughout the store and everything for your business. And right now at Staples, save up to $175 off your print order. Exclusion supply. Visit staples.com/print for details. Ends 2/1. Plus, save even more with the Easy Rewards program at Staples.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Rams and Chargers are feeling grateful about their first-round playoff matchups. Both teams could have been facing much tougher opponents if things had turned out different on Sunday. The Rams will play Minnesota next Monday instead of Detroit, which beat Minnesota Sunday night to clinch the #1 seed in the NFC. Even as a #5 seed, Detroit would have been a lot to handle for the Rams. The Chargers win in Las Vegas Sunday might have been their most important win of the season. The win allowed the Chargers to avoid a first-round game at Baltimore against MVP favorite Lamar Jackson, running back Derrick Henry, and the Ravens' Rough Rider defense. The Chargers will play at Houston Saturday. Houston was 4-5 in the second half of the season. The NFL now has only 5 black head coaches. Gerard Mayo was fired Sunday by New England after 1 season. New England finished 4-13. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah, y'all, come on. Pick up the drums.
At KBLA Talk 1580, we fight the power every day.
Yeah, gotta give us what we want. Gotta give us what we need. Hey.
I listen to KBLA and I love the commercials. I know what the commercials mean. I also, if I'm looking and trying to figure something out, I need something to talk to me that might hit me. And it happens on TV because, you know, every time they show a sporting event, they got the pharmaceutical companies back to back telling people how to fix the sickness on the same stuff that they sell them. So we get it.
Yep, we get it too, Chucky. And that's why at KBLA Talk 1580, we don't black down.
Drop it. Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be. Fight the power. Fight the power.
Want to play a game with me and Dad?
Mommy's not feeling good.
You need to vaporize that cold.
Vaporize?
Yeah, with Dayquil VapoCool. It's Dayquil plus a rush of Vicks vapors.
Whoa.
Come on, honey. Let's let Mommy rest.
You guys are amazing. And so is Dayquil VapoCool.
Dayquil VapoCool, the vaporizing daytime coughing, aching, fever, power through your day medicine. And to vaporize sore throat pain, try Vicks VapoCool drops. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues? Who are you? Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. It provides spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
We have no permanent friends or permanent enemies. Only permanent interests as we effort to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and I really enjoyed the conversations that we've had this hour. And if you thought the conversation that we just had with Norman O'Neill Brown, who received a pardon from President Biden, if you thought that conversation was riveting, get ready for this next conversation with Edwin Allen Jones. He is a 60-year-old man who pleaded guilty to nonviolent drug offenses and has since served in the U.S. Army and achieved the rank of captain before being honorably discharged. He's had a notable legal career and volunteered for addiction recovery groups, and he's here with us today. Mr. Jones, welcome to the show.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. We can hear you just fine. And you're joining us from Kentucky, right?
That's right, Paducah, Kentucky. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, first things first, tell us a little bit about your story. I mean, not everybody gets a presidential pardon, especially in these final days of the administration. Tell us about what led you to even be considered by President Biden for a pardon.
Sure. Well, let me tell you just a little bit about my story. I made it through life, college, law school, got to age 35. I'd never used drugs before in my life until age 35. And at that time, I was going through a divorce, and I'm in my hometown, and just like most of us, I had friends, and we were trying to figure out how to work and have a social life at the same time. And I must say, I was thinking about this. It's important to remember this was before Starbucks, before Vyvanse, before Adderall, before energy drinks. We're trying to work, and we're trying to, basically we're trying to stay up longer. And I got introduced in a trip to Nashville. I got introduced to cocaine. And when we went to Nashville, I did not know we had cocaine. We didn't, but obviously somebody did. And we went to the UK Vanderbilt game. I'm a UK grad. And so we went to the football game. And then after that, we were going to go down to 2nd Street in Nashville, which was at the time a good place to go frolic. And that was our intent. And I had worked that day. I was tired. I knew I was going to hold back the crowd. And I said, guys, I'm tired. I'm gonna call it a night. And we ended up walking back to my room. And I remember when I came out of the restroom, I'd never seen cocaine, and it was there. And they said, you've been asking how we stay up longer than you do, and this is the answer. Do you want to try it? They didn't push it. It was just offered as an experiment. And the truth is, I did want to go with them, and I did want to stay up, and I did want to frolic on 2nd Street, and I tried it. And the reality is, it worked. And that first night, we did have fun. And I don't know if you may be too young to remember the movie Interview with the Vampire. Brad Pitt was in it, and Kirsten Dunst. And
I remember that.
Yeah, she got that first taste of blood.
Yeah.
And she says, I want some more. Mm-hmm. And I remember on the way home from Nashville, Doctor, I remember asking, because I immediately went to, kind of a pragmatic, hey, I bet I could use this. I could build more hours. I was turning at time, so time is money. I could build more. I was having a hard time keeping up with the work, the number of hours it was taking to keep up with work, and the number of hours that it was taking to keep up with the social life that I was trying to experiment with. And so, I was, it wasn't so much the euphoria, although there was euphoria. Mm-hmm. I mean, it brought me out of my shell. It made me more talkative. It seemed to me, I thought I was funnier, had more energy. And for about 18 months, I tried that. It got the best of me. And, it ended up obviously tearing my life up. And I wasn't very good at it because 2 years later I was in trouble, addicted, and had been indicted by a federal grand jury.
I mean, I really appreciate you taking the time to take us on your journey and to help our leaders, learners, and listeners really understand how addiction works, right? It started off as giving something a try, trying out a substance, illegal substance, but a substance nonetheless. And then, the addiction followed, and that addiction led to a spiraling that led you to be systems involved. And so cut to how you got considered for President Biden for a pardon. Had you been pursuing this for a long time? I know you mentioned that you two are an attorney. Right. How did you get consideration from Biden?
So I don't know President Biden, and I don't know anyone in his office, although I do want to mention Deanna Evans, who called me. She apparently is the White House counsel for clemency matters. And she was just so wonderful. I just remember a very warm conversation. She called after I'd gotten the pardon to check on me. And I realized in that process, she knew a whole lot about me and had spent a lot of time studying my package, meaning my the package of the pardon application, which was about an 80-page package, probably 20-page form. I heard your interview with Norman Brown, and I really liked that interview. But so I did it myself. It would be, it obviously helped to be a lawyer. I had access to the information to be able to answer the questions. But to answer your question, I submitted, there was another guy president when I submitted it. And that was about 7 years ago. And I didn't get it. And I did after the election this November. It's kind of pardon season, right? At the end of a president's term, I did write a letter to the U.S. pardon attorney and say, hey, just checking to see if my application's still there. They immediately responded and said yes, which I thought, well, that's either a canned response or they meant yes. And then on December 11th, I got a call from the Washington D.C. area code, and I thought I better take that. And it was good news.
Wow.
So if I could say this,
yes,
really cool to have in our founding document of our country, there's a provision for grace and forgiveness for me country. It's a big deal. And I certainly felt the emotion of that.
Yeah, I bet. And I've heard others sort of say the same. When we come forward, I want to ask you about mass pardons. I want to get your take on mass pardons. Clearly, with your case file alone, I think you said it's about 80 pages, right? And so, for folks that are calling for some sort of, mass pardon, is that even possible given how much time and effort goes into every single pardon application? I want to give you a chance to help us understand that. And then, of course, I've got to ask you the big question that I think so many people want to know. Where do you stand in terms of President-elect Trump potentially pardoning folks involved with the January 6th insurrection? This is making big headlines, and it's not every day you get to talk to somebody who's actually received a presidential pardon. More with Edwin Allen Jones when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union and Drive Time on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered about issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, you tuned into the right place. A More Perfect Union continues when we come forward.
Hey, Mom, I've been meaning to talk to you about some new COVID information I saw online. I read that 3 out of 4 adults in the United States have a high risk factor for severe COVID-19. And Black folks like us with certain conditions like diabetes, heart disease, mental health conditions, or being 50 and older are at high risk.
Boy, you sound like a commercial.
I'm just saying. I know you love your ginger teas and essential oils, but remember, there are treatment options for COVID-19.
I promise if I get sick again, I'll call my doctor to ask about my options.
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. So I take ZQuil.
ZQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZQuil nights. Explore our products at ZQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Hit me! National News The Consequence. Informed opinion and analysis beyond the headlines. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and he is Edwin Allen Jones. You can call him Eddie Jones. He is an attorney and also a proud recipient of a presidential pardon courtesy of President Joe Biden. In our remaining minutes together, Mr. Jones, I want to tick down a list of questions that I had for you. One, regarding mass pardons. You had just shared moments ago that your case file, your application rather, for a pardon was, 80 plus pages. I can only imagine how thick the files are for each individual application. There are a number of folks out there calling for President Biden to go big or go home, do a mass pardon. Where do you stand on that? And is that even possible?
Well, first of all, let me say, I don't know if I'm a proud recipient, but I'm a grateful recipient. Obviously, I would have preferred a life that did not need a pardon. If I could go back and change some behavior in my 30s, I would. But, and I'm a small town lawyer. I'm not an expert on pardons. I just happened to write mine, and it worked. Whether it's lawful to do mass pardon, I presume it is. I think either Trump or Biden pardoned possession of marijuana, and that didn't seem like a bad idea to me. From a standpoint of kind of redefining who are we going to incarcerate and who we're not. I haven't heard a lot of pushback on that pardon. But you asked me specifically about January 6th, and we talked earlier today. Hadn't really given it a lot of thought. I appreciated Norman's answer. But I think I can elaborate a little more on how I feel. I don't, if you woke up on January 6th in Washington, D.C., and you decided to carry a spear or wear a bison helmet and maybe incite a riot and lead someone down a path in which somebody got hurt and your behavior was reckless and intentional, that's one thing. If you woke up that day and you were there as part of a protest rally and you went to breakfast and you had no intent of even that outcome, then it does seem to me, I'm not an expert on it. I haven't evaluated all of them, but it does seem like a lot of mom and dads went up there, maybe got caught up in something, and the sentence that they've received has been longer than similar behavior that I have seen in state court. And I think that is in part because the federal judges are bound by the restraints of the federal sentencing guidelines and, the obvious heavy protection on protecting those who serve in our Capitol. But I don't know, it does seem to me that some of the sentences seem long. I have talked to probably 4 or 5 people who were there in my practice of law. There were plenty of people who were just there, and they were more of a walking spectator, or at least that's my perception. Again,
do you now? You know, you yourself, you live in Kentucky. You know, your politics sort of lean a bit more to the right.
Probably, yeah.
You know, how much does that inform your judgment on this? How much does it inform your sense of justice versus injustice for folks that were involved with January 6th? And I get your point. You know, you're saying there are folks that went there with the intent to harm individuals and engage in lawlessness, whereas you're saying there's some people that may have legitimately kind of got caught up, wrong place, wrong time.
I mean, again, I'm not an expert, and it probably, you know, you may think, well, doesn't Eddie watch the news? And the truth is, you know, I'm more interested. I mean, obviously I watched that day, but I don't live in D.C., and I probably haven't followed it as closely as someone who does live in D.C. You know, by January 8th, it seemed like, all right, the government is okay. Actually, by the evening of January 6th, you know, I didn't ever feel that the government is about to stop being government. I felt like, you know, those guys shouldn't be in there. And yeah, if somebody came in my office, read my mail, and put feet up on my desk, you know, that shouldn't happen. And the Capitol should even be more sacred. But I was struck by a few of the pictures which showed people who had gone into the Capitol without permission, but yet stayed within the ropes, you know, where you would be if you were a tourist. I mean, so it didn't seem, you know, at least some of the pictures to me didn't seem like an out of control crowd. It seemed like people who were there and kind of like, you know, this is a train wreck. I'm going to watch this and see what happens.
But do you think part of the grace that folks, you know, may express to people involved with the January 6th insurrection, folks that may have perpetrated the January 6th insurrection, do you feel like this grace maybe it comes from you know, a sense of, you know, white supremacy, right? The idea that, you know, because this was a crowd of a lot of white people, right? As opposed to a big crowd of black people, right? Nothing to see here, right? You know, is this another example of white folks sort of being judged differently than if that was an insurrection led by black people or brown people, folks that, you know, are very easily or more easily seen as criminals?
Yeah, honestly, I can tell you before your question that, you know, obviously the guy with the spear and the bison, I remember he was white. And now that you're mentioning it, you know, you're probably right. That is a primarily white crowd. I don't know that I had thought about it. I do see it as obviously political loyalty. I mean, probably not a lot of liberal Democrats were part of that crowd, right? Yeah. Do I like the pardon process that I went through, where I know that, you know, there was a lot of evaluation? Yeah, I probably prefer that, feel better about that. But at the same time, I'm not an expert, but just as a dad who lives in Paducah, who occasionally picks up some news, it does feel like some of the sentences for some of the 1,500 people who maybe didn't hit anybody or, you know, didn't cause any harm to anyone, it feels more excessive than what I have seen for similar type behavior in state court.
So Mr. Jones, in our remaining minutes, I want to make sure that I'm clear like water on this. So in your view, if President-elect Trump, January 20th, 1201 says that he's pardoning, doing a mass pardon of folks involved with January 6th, that's not the worst thing in the world to you. That might just be okay with you.
Well, let's pull out violent and nonviolent behavior. Okay.
Yep.
So, if it's people who could arguably say, all right, they went to breakfast that morning. When they ate breakfast that morning at Bob Evans, they weren't planning on starting a revolution and they didn't hurt anyone. That's one category, as opposed to someone who truly planned and wanted to create havoc and injury.
Our thanks.
I wouldn't feel bad. I wouldn't be, oh man, they shouldn't have got that. And I'm kind of like Norman. I'm not in a position to say I got grace, but you shouldn't get grace.
Well, we appreciate you coming on. We want to invite you back anytime to continue to have this conversation and more. Our thanks to Edwin Allen Jones, a recipient of a presidential pardon from Joe Biden. It's not every day you get to talk to a recipient of a pardon. And so thank you for taking the time out to speak with us and share your perspective.
Well, and I do want to say thank you to President Biden for a pardon and to the U.S. Pardon Attorney's Office for processing that.
All right. All right. We heard it here. We're going to have to leave it there. Our thanks to The Village that helps us produce a more perfect union each and every day. Our executive producer, Tavis Smiley, our sound engineer, Andy, our producing team, Kim and Faraji. And of course, each and every one of you, our leaders, learners, and listeners, we appreciate you. And we'll be back again in drive time tomorrow from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific. That's 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. You have been listening to A More Perfect Union only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Africa will join the U.S. ambassador to Ghana for the event. Authorities are searching for a man who allegedly left raw cotton on the steps of a predominantly black church in Burke County, Georgia. Palmer Grove Baptist Church reported the incident, which occurred on